months on and the war in Ukraine continues. But now it's time for Ukraine to set the terms. And they've done this towards China now. Ukraine's foreign minister has told the top Chinese diplomat that Kyiv will not accept any peace proposal to end the war with Russia that involves Ukraine losing their territory or placing the conflict on hold. The statement was made by the minister in Ukraine during a special meeting with China's special representative for Eurasian affairs. In this meeting, Kuleba discussed the ways to stop the Russian aggression, then said that restoring a just peace in Ukraine depended on respect and on sovereignty and territorial integrity of the country. The aim of these Chinese diplomats' visit was to communicate with all parties on the potential settlement of this Ukrainian crisis. Now remember, the special envoy was in Kyiv to promote Beijing-led negotiations to resolve this particular conflict. The Chinese president is very keen on brokering that peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. Now, the Chinese diplomat's arrival in Ukraine comes just 3 weeks after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had a telephonic conversation with Xi Jinping. Li is now expected to visit Moscow as well. He's going to be discussing possible political solution to the entire conflict. A member of parliament from Ukraine joins us on this broadcast to get us more perspective. Ms. Dmytro, thank you so much for speaking with us here on News 18 Global. And I want to start by asking you, now Ukraine has made it clear that the terms are set. No territory will be given to Russia. We will not cede an inch of land. But are you saying that, or has that statement come to the fore because you are expecting China to side with Russia and that China could ask Ukraine to cede some land?
So we hear a lot of speculation about the position of China, but what we know from official sources is that China started negotiating, but not for whatever reason, not with Moscow, but with Ukraine's allies about a resolution of Ukraine's crisis. We need to remember that it's not a crisis, it's a full-scale war in Ukraine. And the resolution should also be respectful of that fact. We now have declared numerous times that Ukraine will not cede any territories or accept any annexation of any land of Ukraine by Russian Federation as a result of this war. We will have to fight until we can return to our historical borders and have the guarantees of security for Ukraine that will make it impossible for any aggression against Ukraine to happen in the future.
But Ms. Dmytro, do you think China is actually capable of brokering a peace deal that ensures that Russia doesn't get an upper hand? Does Ukraine believe that China can be neutral in its approach?
I think China is doing an effort right now that is directed towards a peaceful resolution, which obviously we also are very grateful for, because we will need all the partners internationally to have this peace deal on the terms that will ensure peace for the entire world and stability going forward. China obviously is going to be one of the crucial elements in it, as we have seen already that it can influence significantly the military situation of Russia, with either staying neutral or supporting Russia. So yes, position of China is very important.
Sure. Now, it's not just China. There's an African leaders peace mission as well that's looking to end this particular war. What are your expectations from that particular mission? Do you think that is something that would achieve the results that the world is waiting for?
African countries also need to understand in more details what really is happening in Ukraine, as we see a lot of propaganda in Africa, especially Wagner propaganda, and we need to explain more to the African countries what really is happening here, that it is a full-scale war, it's an unprovoked and unjustified aggression of Russian Federation against the sovereign state of Ukraine, and that these kind of things cannot be tolerated if we want to remain, to keep peace and stability in the world, including on the African continent.
Sure. I want to ask you one last question before I let you go. That the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky just a few days ago had said that the war will end this year and a solution needs to be looked at. We've also heard Ukraine talk about a counter-offensive, but there is no real timeline as such. Would you be able to give us more details as far as that is concerned?
So the war for Ukraine's independence did not start on the 24th of February. It actually started 300 years ago and was continuing. And the most active part of the war started in 2014 with the annexation of Ukraine's territories. So when we're talking about the end of the war, we need to understand that Russia will not stop in its endeavors to weaken Ukraine and to enhance their positions in the Eastern European region. So we need to be allied with NATO and allied with our partners to find a deal that would be possible to broker and that will give sufficient guarantees for Ukraine. The military situation on the front line is only going to enhance the diplomatic efforts and make it easier to speak to Russia, as Russia understands only the language of force.
Sure. Ms. Dmytro, thank you so much for speaking with us here on News 18 Global and sharing your perspective. Sanjay Suri, my colleague, also joining us live to get us more details of what exactly is happening on ground. And Sanjay, we're hearing talk of peace, a proposal that's being floated from multiple quarters, be it by the Chinese envoy who's on a visit to Ukraine or the African leaders. But on the ground, peace is something that's far, far away from the minds of the people who are living in the midst of that violence, because that violence is only intensifying.
Well, consider what happened before the Chinese envoy's visit. Just on the eve of the visit, over the weekend, you had Zelensky visiting Italy, Germany, France and Britain. And in all of these visits, he secured and was promised very much more military support, more ammunition, more missiles, more armored vehicles. And all this was to prepare Ukraine for this counteroffensive. This politically does not seem the best prelude for peace talks with the Chinese envoy. The Chinese envoy landed after Zelensky had made all these moves, and this in itself was a significant statement given the timing and the sequence. The question is what now China will hope to do, and it is not likely in the first instance that Washington will easily countenance a scenario where China plays the peace broker and NATO countries are relegated to the sidelines, that they just fed a war and then they were put aside and China stepped in and sorted it all out. Not likely at all. And also China's credentials are not the strongest. China has spoken of a peace plan. They published a 12-point peace plan on February the 24th. Excuse me. But that plan stops short of saying outright that China opposes the invasion of Ukraine, that China believes that the Russian forces should step back. China has stopped short of saying all that, and that is what leads to questions about the credibility and the possible effectiveness of China's plan.
And the doubts over whether China can play a neutral party have always been floating around, not just from the Ukrainian side, but from around the world as well. For the moment, Sanjay, thank you so much for joining us and getting us the latest and giving us more perspective as far as the war is concerned.